and welcome. You're watching NewsX. I'm Megha Sharma, and joining me on the telecast right now is Mr. Prakash Javadekar. He is the former Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change and for Information and Broadcasting under the BJP government. He's a BJP leader. Thank you very much, Mr. Javadekar, for joining me on the telecast. And of course, the first question, the impact of the budget on the common man, on the taxpayers. Do you think the slabs have been revised and exemption has been given to taxpayers earning an income of up to 12 lakh rupees to ensure that there is a steady flow and circulation of funds in the market, which will then allow for our GDP, which at this point of time is at 6%, to now further increase and reach perhaps 7 or 8%?
This is absolutely true for two reasons. A, middle class was always feeling that we are paying taxes, but in Modi government they started getting services, good infrastructure, good human resource development, good inclusive development. So they were happy. Now this time it was their persistent demand that there should be a tax concession. And this tax concession has come as a bonanza because if you consider in the Congress regime, UPA regime, on 12 lakh, you were paying nearly 2 lakh rupees as tax. That has been saved now. And so he's very happy. The whole money will come in the market, in the consumption demand, and consumer demand is a backbone of Indian growth story, and therefore this was an important thing. But more important, two factors only I take. Human resources development. After all, nation can make progress only if innovates, if only they skill their human resources. And on both these counts, there are major steps. What it is talking of Saksham Anganwadi is the preschool fundamental education, childhood education from 3 to 8 age of, and that is what we conceived in our national education policy. Plus Atal Tinkering Labs at 50,000 more schools. Then IITs to be expanded. More importantly, skilling excellence centers to be established. So there are a lot of efforts so that Bharatiya Bhasha books, all this will bring in the real human capital development, which will be the real asset for future. Second is, as earlier you were debating defense exports and all exports. Exports is a fundamental driver in this budget also. And we are sure that the way things are happening in USA, there is a good chance for Indian industry to penetrate further all over the world. And that we have to take, and that is facilitation in this budget. The ease of doing business is the hallmark. And ease of doing business is very important because even Indian industrialists were investing outside because there were so much burden of compliances and unnecessary compliances, and the same thing again and again and again, and making delay in the whole process. That government wants to avoid, and therefore at the next stage, and that where Nirmala ji has also said that it is with the state government. It's a competitive cooperative federalism, and I really worry about it, and you will agree with it, that states have now to take the reforms forward. Otherwise, central government is doing what it can do. But unless state government reduces the time for sanction and actually permitting the operations, the things will be not changing fast. And that is what is the real point. And in this budget, that has been addressed.
Yeah.
And for that, state governments are now being offered 1.5 lakh crore of interest-free loans. It's a huge huge fund allocation in a way from central government.
Right, absolutely. And one more salient point that was spoken about through the entire speech of Nirmala Sitharaman that lasted a little bit over an hour was job creation, the opportunities that are going to be produced, whether it is with regards to shipbuilding or shipbreaking, whether it is with regards to the loans that are being provided to the MSMEs, whether it is about the Krishi credit cards and so on and so forth. Job creation was the number one focus of the finance ministry when the budget was announced. What is the estimated opportunities that are going to be created if this plan is executed as it has been brought forth?
I think it will work because we have to produce 8 million jobs every year, and jobs, not government employments. And therefore, gig workers' problems are also addressed. There will be basic social security for them, and they will also be covered under Ayushman Bharat. Thus, it will take care of them. It is in a way recognition of that unorganized sector and all other unorganized sectors. 35 crore unorganized employees have registered themselves on e-Shram portal, and I'm very sure that the government will come out in due course of time with good scheme for them also, providing essentially the security, social security, and other benefits. So that will come, I'm very sure.
Okay.
It will.
Okay, and also let's also talk about this very important point that has been mentioned, that has been included in the budget, which is the nuclear energy mission, where there is a plan to generate at least 100 gigawatts of energy by 2047 for transition into green energy. Amendment of the Atomic Energy Act will have to take place. There is a 20,000 crore corpus that has been assigned for this task. How is this going to build India into a renewable energy economy?
Nuclear energy is absolutely environmental friendly, reasonably, not reasonably, fully sustainable, and at the same time, it is in a way net zero thing for emissions are concerned. The issue of nuclear plant is, and my suggestion has always been to the officers at the concerned ministry, that unless they go to the area where they propose to have the plant, there will always be misconception. There will be rumor mongering. Officers and the other people have to go there and first educate and motivate people so they will welcome. But without any real dialogue with the people, that makes a hurdle. And when once agitation starts, everybody starts opposing it. And therefore, today's story is that no real development is taking place because all sides are booked, but there is opposition. So that dialogue is very important. And if that happens, I'm very sure, and there are vested interests also. And as Prime Minister yesterday said, the deep state, which were opposing the Indian development. And as a environment minister, I had seen there were many NGOs reports, annual reports submitted, were saying that we have effectively stopped this development project. So this used to be their credit in the eyes of the foreign donors. But we have now, I think, all these forces will be weakened, and we have to reach out to people, and people want development.
Okay.
Poor people have also tremendous aspirations, and therefore everybody will, and people trust Modi ji very well. This has happened for after many years, that continuously 3 terms, and there is tremendous faith in leadership. That also brings economic development. And therefore, I think this budget is a path-breaking budget on the road. It's a roadmap to achieving 2047 as a developed India. And all factors are taken care of. And I think this is a continuous philosophy behind economic policies of Modi government.
Okay.
People used to
Yeah.
criticize earlier that Modi doesn't understand economics. But I think ultimately he has proved the best economist, prime minister.
Okay, also bringing into focus uh, the allocation that has been made for the development of Bihar. We're talking about the corpus for the Makhana board, talking about food processing institute that is going to be set up. Then we're talking about the green field and the brown field airports that are going to come up in Bihar. Is this more an inclusion made because JDU, which is led by Nitish Kumar, who is the Chief Minister of Bihar, is in coalition with the BJP to form the NDA government, or does Bihar actually need all these development planks?
Bihar needs development. It was lagging behind for decades. But now it is on the stream of development. And more importantly, it was not about election. Modi doesn't think of elections only. He thinks of the whole East. He wants to develop the East India, which has tremendously mineral rich, which has a very fertile soil, but still because of low productivity, they are suffering. And therefore, he wants to improve the productivity as well as marketing. And he has also given a new program of aspirational district, out of which major districts out of 100 districts, nearly 70 districts are in eastern side, all those states. And therefore, he wants to give them a chance, and that is completely reflected with the tremendous amount of allocation for development of all kinds of food grains and more money in the hands of farmers.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Prakash
you.
Javadekar,
Thank
for
you.
joining me on the telecast and sharing
Thank
your
you.
views on Budget 2025. Now, talking about direct tax, where the government of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, when she was announcing the budget, has made a lot of concessions on direct tax. And we are going to take a look at what are these concessions that have been made with regards to the tax deducted at source, tax collected at source, and also the fact that there have been a number of tariffs that have been cut down to ensure there is export promotion on certain goods, especially when it comes to leather industry, especially when it comes to the toy industry, where India wants to portray itself as the global hub of toy manufacturing. So here's a look at the top direct tax announcements. Number one, the updated income tax returns time limit has been increased from 2 to 4 years. This is to encourage more and more taxpayers to comply voluntarily when they are filing their IT returns. Number two, direct tax announcement that has been made is delay in the TCS payment has been decriminalized. The TDS threshold on rent has been increased from 2.4 lakh rupees to 6 lakh rupees. The point number four, the tax deducted at source again. So, there have been a lot of restrictions that had been imposed, and they have all been removed by the finance ministry. Number four, higher tax deducted at source to apply only in non-PAN cases. So, if you have the PAN, which is a norm for a maximum number of people, of citizens in the country, you will not have to comply with those TDS rules any longer. Remove TCS on remittance for educational purposes has also been an inclusion that has been made by the finance ministry. Limit for tax deduction for senior citizens has been increased from 50,000 rupees to 1 lakh rupees. So this gives a relief to senior citizens in the country. Sunset dates for tax concessions related to IFSCS have been extended to 31st March 2020. So this is going to once again bring about a massive impetus in terms of funds that can be then potentially used for circulation in the market. This is all in a bid to make it easier for citizens in our country, taxpayers in our country to live an easier life, ease of living, more disposable income in your pocket. Also talking about how it impacts consumption, how disposable income increases because all these measures have now been inculcated by the Finance Ministry in the budget. Sumit on the telecast with me. Sumit, let's hear it from you. The big ticket items have been discussed. We have been talking about it, the key takeaways, and of course, number one comes to mind is the tax slab revision that has been legendary. It is historic. The fact that since 2005, this is the first time that taxpayers are exempted to pay tax on a salary up to 12 lakh rupees. How is this going to impact an individual, households, and more importantly, the economy?
Megha ji, thank you for having me on your show. It's a beautiful day and a beautiful news. I mean, there are two connotations to it. One is the economic and another there's a political connotation. Also, let's talk about both. The first thing is what I have to congratulate Prime Minister Modi and Nirmala Sitharaman ji is about 42 crore janta. 42 crore is the size of middle class, 31% of the population. In few years, it will be going to 60 crores. 60 crores is almost 40% of the population. This 31% of the population has been given its rightful share, has been given its rightful dues, and it's only Modi government which could have done it. First, you brought the non-taxable part to 7 lakhs. Then from 7 lakhs, you brought it to 12 lakhs. So if you are making around 1 lakhs per month, you will not have to pay a nickel in tax, which is a big, big thing. This class, the middle class which I'm talking about, this 41 crores, this contributes around 25% of the total revenues collected in the country. It's a big number of the direct taxes. This is our income tax contributes 17% of the total revenue collected, which is the biggest than GST and corporate tax, and this middle class is the biggest contributor to that. Then they pay GST, then they pay all kinds of taxes. They keep the country running. We are adding maximum number of people in the middle class, and Megha ji, when we move people out of the proper poverty, we have said we have moved around 24 crore people out of the poverty. They are a part of the lower middle class. This middle class is ever expanding, and this is which is going to be the engines of the growth vis-a-vis consumption, education, market, hospitalization, avionics, anything you talk about. This is going to be the engines of the growth. And when you give them more disposable money, more savings, this money is going to come back to the economy today or tomorrow through consumption, through savings, through mutual funds, through bonds, through stock market, whichever way you want to look at it. And these are the people who are very satisfied because, this segment does not go by mere promises. Now, Modi ji has done something very smart. He has given you it now. You have 4 years to see the benefits coming to you. You have 4 years to see the benefits which you are going to reap. And after 4 years, when the election will come, you are the biggest vote bank and well-read, educated vote bank which will be coming in your kitty. And women will have a very, very effective role in this middle class. And important thing is this, unfortunately, middle class changes its opinions like the quarter end results. Now, after these things done, I think the opinion that Modi ji has delivered things for them, is going to deliver things for them, is skyrocketing now. And we have 3-4 budgets more to go before we hit the Lok Sabha chunav. So I think if you look at that, the overall perspective has changed. This 31% of the population has been liberated, if I can use that word. And I talked to a lot of people today, and they are all happy. I mean, they are praising Prime Minister Modi.
All right, yes. I also have with me my other guest. Let me introduce him as well. We have with us, Yogendra Kapoor. Yogendra Kapoor, thank you very much for joining us. And of course, I want to, take a look at the number of budget announcements that have been made pertaining to the MSME, pertaining to shipbuilding, maritime development, and these are big ticket projects. These are going to help economy grow. When you are creating more jobs, when you are creating more entrepreneurs, which means you're multiplying income, which means you're also generating jobs. When we talk about maritime development, when you talk about shipbuilding and shipbreaking, this is not just your connectivity that is going to thrive because of it. It is also going to create jobs. It is also going to help in building the country's GDP. Do you think enough has been done, or this is a stepping stone to the next number of budgets that are going to be announced in the coming years?
Right, Mega? I would first like to start with that the perception of the middle class that it is the most ignored class that has been taken care of today. Now, the very fact is that if we look at the way things have been moving in the economy, if we look at the World Inequality Report, it shows that the share of the bottom 50% of the population of our country has decreased in last 2 decades. So the point is that if we are looking at creation of more jobs, then I think it was very necessary that as we look at it, that the PLI scheme, it covers 14 sectors in the country. I was certainly expecting that that scheme should have got more broadened up today so that the MSMEs could have got entered into that. When we look at MSME, we have to understand that it is that segment which produces more than 5,000 items, as such, and which can be made competitive within the domestic economy also, and it can be made competitive in the international market as well. So my point is that I was certainly expecting that the scope of the PLI scheme should have got extended to cover more of areas in the country, because that would have ensured, a large scale investment by MSME sector, which could have resulted in the creation of more of jobs, which is a very, very necessary aspect at this moment. If we are looking to, make our country a developed nation, because these are ways in which you reduce the time span of making your country more into a developed nation. The more you lag behind on these aspects, the more it is going to take time in terms of, the overall development of the society as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And these were the four engines that Nirmala Sitharaman started her speech with: agriculture, MSMEs, export, promotion, and investment. And do you think the finance ministry has delivered on all these four aspects?
See, I think the point is that if we look at our economy, we will see that two major areas which are major components of our GDP, which is consumption as well as private investment. They are the ones which have been lagging behind, and we have seen that the consumption levels are also falling in the economy, which is not good for a growing economy like ours. And the point is that if we have to encourage private investment, you see, today we have a situation that we have industry which is sitting on huge cash reserves, which is not getting reinvested in the economy in the manner it should have got done. And on the other side, the way out is that if you want to encourage the MSME sector, then you have to give them more of incentives. Creation of avenues for credit is just not enough. You have to give them more of tax incentives, just as the same way it is being given under the PLI scheme. So I think it's a way forward. I would say that I am sure the government will take a closer look at these aspects, because if you are looking at the overall growth of the country, then it is very important that each and every strata needs to be covered.
Okay, and then talk about export promotion. There have been 7 more tariff rates that have now been removed. This is in a push to make India an export hub, particularly for the leather goods and the toy industry. How is this going to impact the export economy of the country? And should there be more categories included to allow for more export promotion?
Absolutely. You see, if we look at our trade balance against China, we see that our trade deficit is increasing in terms of more of imports against exports to that country. And in terms of the items that have been spoken about by the finance minister today, specifically the electronic industry, the toy industry, these are the ones which are going to be, I would say, India can be a global hub for these very aspects. And I think these are steps in the right direction. But I would have certainly seen, that had there been more items which have got covered, it would have been the right time and place to, move a step forward.
Okay. Joining me on the telecast right now is Dikshu Kukreja. He's a town planner and a prominent Delhi citizen. Thank you, Mr. Kukreja, for joining me on the telecast. And of course, I would like, we were talking about the tax slabs, we've spoken about the country's economy, we're talking about investment, export promotion, agriculture, and the MSMEs. But, one more thing that struck me about the investment plans, proposals that have been made in the budget, particularly about innovation and education. We talk about the Atal tinkering labs that are going to be opened up in government schools now. There is broadband connectivity that is going to be provided to government schools, national centers of excellence that are going to be built in skilling, expansion of capacities in IITs, artificial intelligence center of excellence in education in district schools, and the list is, it's an exhaustive list. Now, is this the government's initiative to push towards building a more skilled India? Because we understand that there is a massive demand, but we have somehow not been able to supply with skilled professionals to do the job.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And I have to admit that, the aspects that the budget has covered, the diversity that it has shown, the widespread breadth that it has been able to encompass is something I would not have imagined. So it's really a pleasant surprise. It definitely reflects what I believe is India moving towards being a developed nation in years to come. It definitely reflects that we are, and we lay now stress and emphasis on being a knowledge-based economy. And I think all these aspects, whether it is the focus on, first of all, bringing more liquidity into the market by giving more disposable income in the hands of this massive middle class that we have, I think is a very welcome step in terms of the tax brackets. But also, I feel the idea of infusion of funds into MSME, which in itself is about 50 to 60 million MSMEs run in this country, employing millions of people. So I think that is a great aspect. And the other things that you have spoken about, which is focusing on urban management, urban innovation, all these aspects, I think, are going to go a long way. And you know what? I see these, many of these measures that have been brought in, these are not just short-term results oriented. They will definitely play a major role if we are looking at an economy which needs to grow at an 8% plus year on year to become a developed nation. I think all these ingredients fill in actually towards that sort of a purpose-driven economy that we should be looking for and aspiring towards. So yes, there are so many aspects that if one was to start talking one by one of each, it would not be fair on the other co-panelists. But overall, my reaction is very much in the way you have observed, that it's very widespread, it's very, very diverse, it's all encompassing, I would say, in terms of the rural-urban balance that it's been able to create, and it's being able to bring in a vigor into the Indian economy, which is the state of competitiveness, which I always believe needs to be in, if we expect our states a very cooperative federalism, we expect our states to have those kind of incentives in play that they are able to attract businesses. And this is literally like creating a more capital-based economy. And I would just say it's the way to go.
Right, absolutely. And exactly. Do you think the budget is entrepreneur friendly, whether it is in agriculture or an MSME or export promotion, about small time traders, even big businesses like shipbuilding and shipbreaking, and therefore, and hospitality? The fact that there have been 50 of these sites that are going to be narrowed down to, and the government is going to make this important push to build them as the best top tourist destinations in the country. Homestays are going to be given subsidies to build these homestays in different parts of the country. Again, so tourism, hospitality, so all these areas within the business sphere have been covered. So do you think this is a more entrepreneurial friendly budget than the others?
Completely agree with you, and that's the way it should be, right? We need to, in today's world, encourage entrepreneurs, and the way we have this startup ecosystem in India, which is literally becoming unmatched in the world. So these kind of initiatives are great. And for years, we have been talking about the tourism potential that this country has, given the depth that we have in terms of how we can create tourism, and we've been yearning to do so. I think these very specific measures geared towards whether it is Buddhist tourism, whether it is about medical tourism, and many other initiatives in the tourism sector, like you spoke about homestays. What better way to diversify this whole concept of hospitality and engage the communities? Because one of the most enriching experiences, especially in a country like ours, which is so diverse, is this aspect where tourist comes and gets the real look and feel of the place. And that feel can only come when you are actually staying with the local residents, and the kind of economic fillip it brings to the community by their getting engaged in tourism. And I, for one, believe that these are not just direct gains that one must see. The indirect gains that come from things like that. The moment somebody who's a homestay participant, his level of responsibility, in many ways, the way that gets expanded. For example, if my home is catering to homestay, I'm going to make sure that my own neighborhood, my street outside, my area outside is neat and clean and welcoming. And these little measures, drop by drop, go in really transforming the nation. So yes, we can spend zillions into smart city missions, but if we can engage and empower the community, which is what this kind of programs do, it creates its own kind of momentum. So I'm very excited to see that it's not just about talk anymore when we, have these slogans that we hear every few months when elections come, that the country is going to grow by leaps and bounds, and this is going to happen, that's going to happen. I compliment the finance minister for actually laying that groundwork, that blueprint, which allows this entire fantastic country, which is so diverse, so large, and has so much to offer, and its people, that we can all participate now in the growth of the country.
Stay on with me, Diksha. I also have with me, let me also introduce my third guest into the conversation, Mr. M.J. Khan. He's the chairman of the ICFA. Mr. Khan, we're talking about investments. We're talking about entrepreneurial impetus that is being given by the government, by the finance ministry in this budget. And I have to mention these 2 points because this is a push towards making women self-reliant, making women entrepreneurs. So there are women, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. These are first-time entrepreneurs are going to be handed over loans up to 2 crore rupees. There's enhanced credit for farmers, which has been increased from 5 crore to 10 crores. Additional credit of 1.5 lakh crore for the next 5 years has at this point of time been allocated for farmer-related entrepreneurial programs. How do you feel this is going to help keep the momentum of Make in India, Build India in a bid for us to then dream of touching the third largest economy mark by 2030?
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for inviting me. Budget is overall very good budget, and especially it needed to focus more on agriculture, and it has focused. So agriculture is clearly a focus which was required to be in focus. It is. First time we see that 3.5% growth, which has given boost to the overall economic growth. That is very, very promising. And the sectors it has further identified are the sector that any good budget should have identified and placed the budgetary support to that, which is fisheries, which has grown at unprecedented level. Last 8 years growth is 12.99, virtually 13%. Nowhere in the world and within the country, probably no sector would record 30% growth, and certainly not any primary subsector. So that has been focused. Seed is a problem because that is basic input for productivity enhancement. So there is a special program for seed created. There is also additional pulses program that has been announced. But what is more important is what you have mentioned, the entrepreneurship in agriculture needed badly. Because there are a lot of distortions, there are a lot of gaps which need to be plugged, and plugging through the innovative solutions that come from the entrepreneurship. Young startups, the kind of innovative model they bring in, and the solution they provide, that needed to be promoted, whether these are women entrepreneurs or any entrepreneur, but entrepreneurship in agriculture. We have almost 4,000 startups today, but that needed further boosting. So entrepreneurship and accounting and good agriculture practices, the 3 areas I often mention. So where we have in terms of absolute production, we are the second largest agriculture economy in the world after China, much ahead of US. Many people think US is much ahead of us, which is not correct. But in terms of productivity, we are lagging behind, and therefore, the focus of 100 districts, earlier we had aspirational district, 100 district program. Now it is productivity focused 100 district program. I think that is going to be a game changer. And first time, the agri-export policy that this government brought in, where the role of the states was focused. So I believe that the states, in partnership with the center, many of the reforms that are required to be driven, particularly the market reform, that should be driven. So therefore, overall, I believe that it should further catalyze the growth in farm sector and particularly the value addition through entrepreneurship.
Sumit, coming back to you and talking about, investment, it is not just investment for entrepreneurship, for MSMEs, for agri-related entrepreneurial activities, but it is innovation towards R&D, towards education, and towards innovation. And when we talk about setting up AI centers of excellence in education, expansion of IITs, you're talking about national centers of excellence in skilling to be set up in districts, broadband connectivity to government schools, Atal tinkering labs to foster scientific temper among young minds. How is this going to help our economy to build wholesomely?
think, Meghaji, the answer is very simple. The answer is you are trying to get people thinking at a very basic level at a very early age. You are creating those stimulus for innovation, for entrepreneurship to happen. I think one of the beautiful aspects of this budget, when I go through the details carefully, is the unitary entrepreneurship, which has been highlighted everywhere. If you talk of these 5 lakh SC/ST Mahilas which will be given the loans, if you talk of this, for example, a small thing I want to bring in, you talk of this homestay, and homestay will get Mudra loan. It might look very simple, but look at the numbers. Today, if you look at Paris, it used to be the number one tourist destination with 5 crore tourists visiting in a year. It was number one in the world. I take you to Thailand, which gets $65 billion from tourism. Now, if I look at Kashi Vishwanath, or if I look at, Kashi Vishwanath ji, it got 13 crore tourists. It's 2.5 times that of Paris. If you look at our domestic aviation market, the CAGR is 23% estimated for 5 to 7 years. You are adding 50 to 80,000 hotel rooms, but the quantum of travel which you are planning, domestic and international, still that is not okay. And there's one more data I want to share with you. To build a 3-star hotel, your cost for building one room is around 50 lakhs. For when you go to a 5-star hotel, your cost of building one room, sab kuch mila ke, comes to 1 crore. Now imagine if you can have this Mudra loan and you have this homestays which are built to maybe 2.5 star. They can create a one room which can be rented out to the people who are traveling. At such a small money, you can really revamp this whole industry and you can ease the load on the 3-star, 5-star infrastructure, and the price points will be realistic. So if you have more realistic price points in aviation and in the hotels and all, you will have more people traveling. And religious tourism is something which is sukhi ho, you're happy or unhappy, whichever way, it will continue. And let's target Thailand, because if Thailand can get $65 billion from tourism, we have much more than Thailand to offer.
Okay,
And if we combine this international and domestic, it will be mind-boggling.
Right,
So these
absolutely.
are
Stay
aspects
with me,
of
stay with me,
entrepreneurship.
Sumit. I also have with me on the telecast Mr. Kamal Bali, Managing Director and President of Volvo Group in India. Thank you, Mr. Bali, for joining me on the telecast. And of course, your first views, what were the key takeaways for you when the budget was announced earlier in the morning?
Yeah, Megha, thank you for having me on your show. Megha, I think I was very delighted to see a very growth-oriented budget, despite the complexities in the overall global market. I think there was a very, very clearly a direction towards a growth orientation. Very inclusive. I think the second thing, very inclusive. She's touched on probably every sector of the economy, every social domain. I think it's very inclusive. And third, I think she's kept on focus on investments, both on capex infra and also inviting private sector to really unleash the animal spirits with very new ideas on PPP schemes and others. So I think these were my clearly the takeaways: growth while maintaining fiscal prudence, opening up, and I think the big one for the middle income group was a huge surplus amount in the hands of young India, and I think this can really give a spur to consumption, investments, and savings. So I think overall a very, very good budget, and I believe the the infrastructure, the continuing focus on infrastructure. It could have been a little more, but I think sky is the limit when it comes to that. But I think they have done very, very well. A good, thoughtful, inspiring budget.
Okay, when Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, started off with her speech, she spoke about the 4 pillars: the poor, the youth, the farmer, and the women. And under these 4 pillars, there were 4 engines that were described, which was agriculture and MSME and investment and export promotion. Do you think all of them have been uniformly covered in terms of the credit that has been infused, in terms of the MSMEs and the opportunities that are being given to the farmers, to the women, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, first-time entrepreneurs? We talk about the innovation that is being created by way of education, AI, centers of excellence that are being opened up, IITs being branched out to other parts of the country as well. Do you feel it to be a wholesome budget when all these 4 aspects that she had spoken about at the start, has she been able to give justice to all of them?
Yeah, Megha, very good point you brought in, and I think that's exactly what I started with, saying that it's where it touches every sector of economy, every domain, every section of society. So I think so we can always debate on the extent of what we need. Our ambitions and aspirations are always more than the resources. But I can tell you, let me look at 3 or 4 of these. The agriculture. So agriculture is, as an engine of growth. So she's saying that she's covering 1.75 crore farmers with focus on diversity of crops, productivity, sustainability, best global practices, covering 100 agri districts. So I think mission on pulses, Atmanirbharta. So I think it's been I can only say it's very thoughtful. We will need to read the fine print to see how much money has been allocated and how much we need. But I think for me, it's a direction, and I think the direction is very positive. Then you look at MSMEs. MSMEs, there are about close to 6 crore MSMEs in India, both services and others. So I think, and they are really the core of the Indian economy. If you look at the share in the overall economy they have, the share in India's exports, it's very, very big, upwards of 30-35% in each category. So I think very important here, labor-intensive sectors have been brought into focus, like leather, toys, national mission on clean tech, solar PV cell, EV manufacturing. So I think a huge focus on manufacturing MSMEs as well, and touching the right aspects on that. Let me look at investments then. Investments was very, very important for. So I think one thing very interesting which has come out is that every ministry will bring to the table the list of potential PPP projects which private sector can have a look in. So this is very interesting. So 3-year pipeline from each ministry, monetization plan for the next 5 years, national monetization pipeline. It used to be 6 lakh crore. For the next 5 years, they are planning 10 lakh crore. So this also private sector could pick up some of these, so that the government has the propensity to spend more on social sector capex, on health, education, skilling, AI mission, and things like that. So to my mind, as you rightly said in the beginning, I think they've touched almost every pillar of our economy, every driver of India's growth story. And obviously, we can always debate and agree and disagree on how much it was needed and how much has been given. But to my mind, that's less important. More important is the implementation, the serious implementation on ground now, and taking these initiatives as Team India, the industry, academia, government, authorities, civil society. Everybody now has to take this on a mission mode and take it to its logical conclusion. I think that's more important.
Yeah. Another aspect that I did want to touch upon and wanted your opinion of was about, she spoke about shipbuilding and maritime development. So it serves a lot of purposes. Although I think a 25,000 crore rupee corpus for maritime development is rather small. in my opinion. There have been a number of ports that have now been opened up. Shipbuilding and shipbreaking has been started off in breakneck speed, perhaps a little later than it should actually have happened. Not only does it serve the purpose of connectivity, it is bringing you millions and millions of jobs that are going to be created. Of course, it's a massive revenue driver. Of course, the trade routes that you have up until now not been able to make money on, not been able to capitalize. Unfortunately, even though we are surrounded by the seas, by the oceans on the three sides, how does this movement towards making India into a maritime power look like in the future?
That's for me, Megha?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So Megha, yeah, that's another great opportunity which we have not really, as you rightly said, we have not leveraged. And I think there's a huge focus. In fact, we are, as Volvo Group, we are also participating in some of the developments in that area on the powertrain, on the engines. So we are trying to bring some new technology on dual fuel engines, methanol engines, as part of the marine strategy for India for shipbuilding. So I think this is going to be important, and we are actually looking forward to these. And the good thing is that several PPP opportunities, public-private partnership opportunities, are available in all these areas. So it's not that the PSU money has to be spent. I think the private sector, the moment a thing makes sense, the private sector will be more than willing to invest in the growing India story. And the India story actually is looking very, very inspiring. If you look at rest of the world today around us, I think we are at a sweet spot, and we are in spotlight, not only because we are growing at the fastest pace, but I think we are doing a few things right. So I think we need to continue on this. But the bottom line is now implement execution, and that is where we at times miss our goals and miss our targets.
Okay.
I think in terms of direction, we are on track.
Mr. Bali, if we talk about the budget today and we do not talk about the IT income tax bonanza that has been announced by the finance minister, then that would be something of an anomaly. So how do you view, in the larger scheme of things, of course, the households get more disposable income, consumption, savings increase, circulation of money happens in the market. How does this impact industry in our country?
Oh, big time. I think it can actually, and it will. To my mind, it shall kickstart a virtuous cycle. People will start consuming more. The young generation will start consuming more. When the consumption happens, there'll be more demand for companies. More demands mean more investments. More investments means more jobs. So it is going to kickstart a virtuous cycle of consumption and demand, and I think that's something very, very good for the India story. And this is a fairly large number, so your middle income group will start bulging a little bit more. So India will not be just a simple 1.4 billion population. You will be many more. You will be more than 400-500 million consumers. So I think that's a very, very good story which I see. So I think this one is a very big one. The government, on the face of it, is going to forego 1 lakh crore of revenue, of tax income. But to my mind, when the consumption will take place, the money will come back to the government through indirect taxes, through GST. When these youngsters consume things, there is a GST they will pay on what they buy. So the money will come back into the government system through GST. So to my mind, it's a great thing. It's a win-win for everyone. It's a feel-good factor for everyone. And I think that's the way it should be. And I think our wages are already at a lower end of the spectrum. They need to grow up. So indirectly, this will help improve wages to some extent for the middle income group at least. And I think, and that's one group which has been wanting some of these. It's a very, very good feel-good factor in addition to to be a good economic sense.
All right. On that note, thank you, Mr. Kamal Bali, for joining me and sharing your views on the budget today. I'm going to come back to you, Dikshu, and I want to talk about indirect taxes, and we're talking about the basic customs duty that has now been removed or slashed to quite the percentage when it comes to the toys industry, when it comes to leather, when it comes to a few other of these few of these goods that are manufactured in India and then are sold across the globe. Do you think there could be more goods that could be added to the kitty to make India a global hub and a global export hub, not just limiting ourselves to toys and leather and a sundry few of these goods, but to a larger market?
Well, absolutely. And Megha, if you see, since President Trump has assumed office, all that we are hearing about is the global trade wars and the tariff regimes, etc. So today, if India has to be a global economic power, if we have to be, we then definitely have to be globally competitive. And at the end of the day, what are these indirect taxes or customs duties, etc., doing? They are bringing money to the exchequer. So really, it's all about managing your finances smartly. The government needs certain revenue and has its expenditure, as we see the typical rupee every year, the way it's explained in terms of income and expenditure. So I think by rebalancing this smartly, we are allowing that the forego that happens as a result of these custom duties reducing or being removed can be other sources of income for the government. But what it does is it unleashes that power at a global scale for Indian goods and Indian businesses to be competitive. And today, that's the order of the day we are living in. Unless we are globally competitive and unless we are well entrenched in the global trade market, there's only that much. Yes, we have a very large domestic consumer base, but that's not the only way we can sustain ourselves with an 8 plus growth factor that we are looking at for the nation. So therefore, reduction in or elimination of some of these custom duties is a very welcome step. And I also agree with you that maybe this needs to be looked at even more deeply to see how we can expand this into other industries, other businesses and sectors so that it places us well in the global scenario.
Okay. Coming back to you, Mr. Yogendra Kapoor, talking about, I wouldn't say it's a sluggish growth rate of 6.3%. After all, we are the fastest growing major economy of the world. The estimate that has at this point of time been projected in the economic survey and by other global entities is that India is going to grow at a projected 6.8% GDP rate. Do you think this is sufficient for India to then race ahead and not just reach the level of the third largest economy, which it says is going to achieve by 2030, but our larger goal is to be a $30 trillion economy by 2047. And if we draw comparisons to China, where both our economies were floundering and grew together, but somehow China's growth rate was exponential. They were for 2 decades growing at the rate of 10% and plus. How do you think the move that comes by slashing the tax slabs is going to help increase the growth rate from maybe 6% to could it reach to 8-9% in the future?
See, Megha, India enjoys the demographic dividend in the form of largest number of youth in the world, and it is very important then in order to ensure that they remain as strategic assets for the country and don't get converted into a liability. It is very important for the government also and the private sector to see that the optimum utilization of the resources need to take place, because if we don't do that, you see, now look at the size of our country. We are almost 1/5 of the world, and what are we contributing towards the GDP of the world? It is not even 3.5%. So, and look at it from that angle, that in 1765, India used to be the producer of 25% of world GDP. And by the time the British colonialism ended, we ended up with a meager 2% GDP and 2% contribution towards GDP of the world. And from in last 125 years, we see that the share of our contribution in world GDP has just been almost nearly same, just by a meager increase from 2% to 3.5%. So I see a great potential going forward, and it's very important that we need to be actually growing in double digits. But I know that it's time. I mean, it's very wishful thinking, but and in order to do that, there has to be a massive push towards entrepreneurship, because you see the real growth of a country, it comes from the development of the private sector. And in that aspect, I have always felt that a country like India, it is very important that the MSME sector, which basically is the backbone of our Indian industry, it needs to be given complete support by the government also, by the banks also, because ultimately they will remain the drivers of the Indian economy.
Okay, okay, all right. But I think more than MSME, it is the capex, and talking about capex, there are two two of these commodities that drain the coffers. One is oil, the second one is defense. And of course, in a bid to balance it out, there has to be strong maritime trade that is going to allow for bringing in the revenues, and push needs to happen in those directions. And then it is obviously going to cascade into the larger development of the country by way of increased GDP growth. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast. Stay tuned on NewsX. On the other side, we discuss the various other aspects of the budget and what is it that India at this point of time has deciphered of how the budget looks like this year. Thanks for watching.